This is Creative Banter. For me, photography is a pathway toward finding meaning in life and healing my mind, body, and soul. The process through which my photographs are made is quite important, and when I find a system that works, it is best to stick with it. This week, Ben and I worked through this philosophy, while also discussing whether every photographer truly needs a large body of work. Further, we discussed the lack of desire to be seen as an authority figure, as well as how much dogs love peanut butter. Let's dive right into this, shall we? Finally got the chance to go out for a little walk in the woods today.
Oh, nice. Is this with or without puppies?
Without puppies.
Okay.
I could not. I took my camera out and I could not imagine the camera and 2 puppies or even just bringing Emmy out.
Yeah.
That would be tricky, especially with how young she is. But no, it was nice to get out. It was just went to my local park that I frequent and 2 hours maybe, something like that. Just walking around, observing, just being in nature again after it's been about a month since I've been able to get out because of getting Emmy and dealing with them. So
yeah,
kind of missed all of the nice fall color, but we really didn't have like anything this year around us.
I wonder why that is.
I don't know. Like it came along. It was good for maybe a few days just in sections, and now it's like done with. And I don't know.
Did you have some wind that come through and swept the leaves out, or was it just like the color didn't really turn that much and they're just gone, or like what?
It was just the color.
Huh.
Yeah, it was just the color. I mean, it was green for a while, and now we're starting to get those hues through, but it's not like the colors aren't vibrant. It's just kind of a lot of trees are already shaking off their leaves, and I don't know, it's weird. But
and you have mostly all like deciduous forest where you live, right? Not a lot of pine trees, mostly just all deciduous stuff.
It's a mix, but yeah, mostly deciduous. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. It was weird. Not like it really matters to me at the end of the day, because whatever.
Yeah.
But it's still like, it's weird to see everybody on social media and on Discord and all of that talking about, oh, look at these fall colors, and like you with your fall trip to Zion, and Andrew Baruffi going over there too and seeing all of that.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking at my backyard. I'm like, yeah, we've got some. It looks kind of pretty, but I mean, it's nothing special.
Yeah.
So some intimate details around the house, but other than that, not really anything.
Yeah. You end up taking any pictures when you're out wandering around?
I took 2. Yeah. I actually took the 4x5 out this time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Took the 4x5 out and exposed 2 sheets of film. One adds a triplet of leaves in the lake. So I'm curious to see if that one turns out because of the movement. There shouldn't be too much, but
were they like on the surface? Is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah, they were on the surface of the water, just barely clinging on. There were 2 of them that were clinging onto each other onto a little branch that was sticking out, and then there was one in the far back that was sticking out of a branch as well. And it seemed calm enough.
Yeah.
It was a half-second exposure at f/16.
Okay.
Because otherwise I would have, if I closed down my aperture any further, it would have been like 2 seconds. I'm like, that's way too long.
Yeah, that's asking a lot. Was it morning time or afternoon or?
Mid-morning.
Mid-morning. Okay. So there's a chance it could still be decently still then.
Yeah.
And in a half second, I mean, that's pretty generous when it comes to like movement. And sometimes, maybe even if there's a little bit of movement, maybe it could be like the good sort of movement too.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it before. I don't mind movement in my photographs, but especially when it's like this and those are the main subjects, I want them to at least be like 80% of the way there.
Yeah.
Where they're sharp across, and a little bit of movement I'll take, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
And then the other photograph that I took was right off alongside the road. There is an old building. I don't know if it's like an old warehouse. I don't know if it's currently in use, but they have a dumpster sat out there, and alongside of it there grows these, I don't know what kind of trees they are, but they'll grow up and then someone will come by and cut them down, and then the next year they'll grow back up and kind of go throughout it.
Yeah.
And I had taken the same or a similar photograph, similar composition of this scene 2 years ago, maybe, and totally different tree that was there.
Huh. Just because they grow pretty fast.
Yeah, this first one was maybe tree's the wrong word. Maybe it's more of like a bush kind of I don't know exactly.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's some kind of growth that the first time it grew like out of the dumpster a little bit and then was popped up. And then this time it's just alongside of it and it has a bunch of like limbs growing out. Real nice, like reddish leaves going on with it. So I don't know, just playing around some with it and seeing what happens.
Yeah.
So
is that one where you used a color filter to kind of work with those red leaves to make them go lighter or anything like that? Or
no, because I didn't really see it being all that necessary with it. The light was shining on it pretty nicely. Mm-hmm. So the light was catching the leaves just enough that it was standing out from the background enough for me. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Plus, if I would have added the red filter, it would have gone from, I think I photographed it at an eighth of a second. So you would have been closer to like half a second or so.
Yeah.
So I didn't want then wind movement, cars driving by. I didn't want to risk anything.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you know you're a photographer when you start a story by saying, yeah, so there's this dumpster, right? And then there are these trees, and it just worked so well. And you know, the average person's like, yeah, so it's a dumpster, and there's some trees.
Yeah. So why are you taking a photo?
I look forward to seeing that one. That's because that sort of goes in the category of, you know, there's some story to be had from, you know, between those two very different sort of elements.
Yeah.
And so I look forward to seeing that one once you develop it and all that.
Yeah. I think it's funny because when I got in the Sony and we were talking about me getting that, you were like, oh, you'll be back to 4x5. And it kind of pissed me off when you said that, just a little bit. It just rubbed me the wrong way.
Because you knew I was right.
Like, yeah. It was one of those things of like, I'm taking this as a challenge. This is a personal challenge here. And then I'm keeping the Sony. I'm still going to play around with it because I like that macro lens and seeing what I can all do with it. But at the end of the day, too, like I was thinking about it this weekend, and I said to my girlfriend the other night, I'm like, I think I'm going back to 4x5. And she's like, no, you're not. She's like, no, I won't let you. I'm like, it's going to happen. It's just, I was looking at a photographer on Instagram, is it Tag? Tayag?
You know, I don't know the pronunciation. I think Tayag, but I don't know the exact pronunciation. But yeah, he's a great guy, a really good photographer.
Yeah, I was looking at his work, started following him, and I'll put a link in the show notes as well. But I was looking at what he was doing, and I'm like, that looks fun. And I'm on YouTube, and most of the people that I follow are film photographers. I'm like, yeah, I kind of miss that.
Yeah.
And really what it all comes down to, at least for me, is it's more than just the process. Because obviously the process with film and working with large format especially is like nothing else. You can't get anywhere close to that with digital.
Yeah.
But more than that, it's just, I don't have the desire to bring out the Sony like I do with the 4x5 because I'm not capturing as much meaning in my photographs with the Sony.
Yeah. Because you're not as involved in the process. It is definitely a different process with a large format. But there's also the balance between, you know, having the digital and the film, and you know, they have their own place and they're different. But I think ultimately for you, it's going to be a matter of finding that sense of balance between the formats. Yeah,
it's one of those things like I'll bring out the 4x5 like today, and I'll stumble upon a scene like those leaves in the water, and there's a story behind that.
Yeah,
and I can like craft this story around this photograph, and I feel it almost immediately, and then I feel compelled to make that photograph. Whereas with the Sony, I'm just playing around. I'm walking around my backyard and photographing whatever's around just to take advantage of the macro or the colors that are there. And it's just a totally different working process. And I can't seem to find that like true parallel. I can't bring over the real meaning focused photography from film over to digital.
Yeah.
So I think like I said, I'm still going to keep the Sony. I don't know that I plan on using it for my personal work, but I do have plans of doing some like freelance work, whether it's like second shooting for wedding photographers, trying that out, and doing some architectural or real estate photography just to get some money flowing and just to try new things with it. And then if I do end up doing any kind of YouTube channel, talking to camera sort of thing like we talked about last week, then I'll end up using the Sony for that. So it's definitely going to be kept around, but I don't know. I just think at the end of the day, you were right.
Well, it's one of those things where it's very difficult to explain to someone how something like working with large format changes the whole process. And I guess as you're talking, the thing that I was thinking is how just the way of working with a large format makes it so much easier to put meaning into your work because you're so much more involved in it. And it just, there's something about that process, that flow state. You're not thinking about, I mean, there's all these things you have to do in the right order and all that, but you're not thinking about that when you're working with it. It's just a matter of going through the process, going through all the steps, and there's something kind of magical about it. But that being said, I will say that, I mean, I still at some point will get a digital kit as well. I was looking on the Fuji website again at the medium format digital setup with the new 100 megapixel. I was looking at the lenses. I'm like, oh man, maybe at some point I'll get these. Maybe I'll buy a lens before I buy the camera just to force me to get the camera at some point or something like that. But I was also thinking about how so much of those decisions when it comes to getting a camera are based around all the things that you think you're going to be doing with that camera and all the story, this narrative that you create in your mind in terms of, oh, if I had that camera, I could do this or I could do that. But I also know that based on my past experiences that just that process of putting meaning into my own work is so much better suited for film. So that's why I'm not taking it too seriously. But then there's also things like, coming back from my fall trip design where, it was $1,200 for, the film and processing and such. And so it's a matter of balancing all that. I think from a purely business standpoint, it's kind of ridiculous to shoot film for what I do. Just because, I'm already, my expenses are so high, but at the same time, it could be that that's just what I need to do in order to produce the sort of work I'm satisfied with, which is kind of what fuels the whole process and keeps things, going. And I'll also say that, so we're recording this on a Thursday and I picked up my film on Tuesday. Usually I'll do the film reveal video where I look at the film truly for the first time on camera. But this time, I had exposed so much film. There were some photos that I was very curious about.
So you took a peek.
I took a peek. I took a peek at every single sheet of film in that box.
It was just a quick peek though, right?
It was
just
a quick peek.
I
did not pull out the loop. There was no looping of the film.
Yeah, so it doesn't count. We're good.
It doesn't count. I did take a few pictures of the film on the light box just to send to my wife while she was at work. But I will say that when you see and this will be a little different for you because you're shooting black and white, but when I see those transparencies on a light box, all of a sudden everything, it's all worth it.
Yeah.
At that point in time, is my hopefully my voice isn't giving out here. As we were talking before we started recording, I went for a ride on my bike for the first time in a while today. It's a really dry day, so I just inhaled a lot of dry air. So it's probably messing with my voice here. But yeah, seeing those transparencies on the light box when the composition is as I want, as the conditions are ideal, there is a strong sense of satisfaction that comes with that, and a strong sense of permanence that comes with that just makes it all worthwhile. So that's something that is nice. And I'll also say that of all the film I looked at, there were two standout shots. And sometimes if there's an early standout shot, I'll look back at that photo and begin to resent it with time. Oh, it isn't quite right, or there's that. But I think these ones will stand the test of time. But there's one photo of this maple tree that I photographed in a meadow. And I photographed it last year. It's a vertical photo. And last year when I photographed it, the fall color was just starting. It was okay, but it could be a little better. But this year, the fall color was perfect on that scene. And my exposure is spot on. There was absolutely no wind. Composition is good. And so that is one of those scenes. And I think this is something we talked about in a past episode where, I knew where to be and when. I had already tried to photograph. It didn't quite work out right. So it was my goal to return to that scene and photograph it. And sure enough, it worked out. And, all that paid off with it. But then there was another scene I photographed that was a standout, which was a complete spur of the moment sort of photograph, where I was hiking along without my camera because I thought I was done for the day. And then I saw something, ran back to my truck, grabbed my camera, set up for it, pretty much working on instinct. And that one turned out really good too. So it's kind of the opposite sides of the spectrum. But it was very pleasant to see the film and to see that pretty much everything turned out fine. There's one where it's flaring up a little bit because the sun's a little out of view, and I didn't block the sun because I didn't think I needed to, but I should have. But beyond that, it turned out pretty good. And I'm not sure I'd have that same experience of if it was shot with digital, that sense of permanence to the images. So
especially because you can see right away whether you got the photograph correct and everything too,
which kills that sense of mystery, that sense of wonder.
It definitely does. Yeah, because I'll find myself, and I think one of the other things that I really, if I were to go and completely commit to digital, even for like a month, it has to be with a bunch of rules around it. And I think that's a major problem for me because it's so easy to just pick up the camera and go walking around with just the camera, where you're not locked down to a tripod. So then you're not really thinking about your compositions, and you can look back and retake that same photograph or similar photograph 7 different times if you didn't get it right the first time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Have you tried using one of those little composition finders like I use? The little plastic frame?
I haven't just because I only have one lens with the 4x5, and even with the Sony, I just have the 90. Yeah. So I'm I have, at least with 4x5 especially, I have a very good idea of what's going to be in frame versus what's not.
Yeah.
Because I've worked with that same focal length for 4 going on 5 years now.
Yeah. I'd be curious though to see if, even if you set a rule for yourself where you're I'm not going to take the camera out until I know for certain exactly where this photo is, where to stand, where to, to get everything set up. And see if that simple process of using the little framing tool, because for me, I can look at a scene and I can know that there's some potential there, but it's not until I pull out that framing tool and put a rectangle on the scene that I know instantly if it's going to work or not. And I think that if at some point I do jump back into the digital game again, not, as the only way of going, still having film, but using digital for certain things. But I think I would still rely on that technique of using that framing tool just because it allows you to make, I think, all those decisions that otherwise would be made when you look through the viewfinder and you're a little bit more blind to your surroundings at that point. And so it'd be interesting to see if you were to try to use one of those framing tools before getting the camera out, if that makes it a little bit more of a film-like experience for you.
Yeah, it could. It's something I consider for sure.
Yeah.
But I think one of the other things that I was going to say about it, I'm losing my train of thought here.
That's what happens if you've been just hanging out with puppies for weeks at a time.
Oh yeah, it's just gone. Just ADHD mind on speed and puppies.
Yes.
Oh, one of the other things that I was going to say. So with getting feedback from this Finding Meaning project that we had talked about too.
Yeah.
From different people. Out of the 8 or so people that I contacted and asked for general advice, I mean, everybody says that it's a good idea and everything. But I had, I think, two or three people that contacted me oh, well, I think you need to start putting out more work, more photography and work on that and use that as you just need more work out there, put it that way, which I don't necessarily agree with. And especially considering it was, say, 2 out of the 8 people, it's a few people think it, whatever.
Yeah.
But for me, it's more about the message with everything. And especially given like how I work with 4x5 and even with digital a little bit, there's so much more importance for me on the meaning aspect of it, like I was saying earlier.
Yeah.
That for me to just be throwing work out there without, like, just on a whim, like I have photographs that I could process from digital that are just sitting on the memory card right now, and I'd be okay with them, but it wouldn't feel right to me.
Yeah, like I totally get that. Yeah.
I would much rather have a small portfolio, say like Simon Baxter. His portfolio on his website is, I think, 45 photographs. And of course, he just added a new gallery to his website as well that has more of the rainforest stuff. But still, for so long, he had like 30 to 45 photographs carefully curated on his website, and that was his work. And I resonate more with that kind of approach for putting out photography, where it's just carefully curated work. Like, this is the work that I really stand by and that means something to me. And hence, this is how I have learned to heal. And that's really what this message is all about, learning to heal through nature and creativity, not how to necessarily make a business out of landscape photography. Because, of course, if you want to make a business out of landscape photography, I totally get it. You want a high quality, large portfolio of work to show people and to have presented. But for something like this, where it's more about the message, I don't know. And I think that's why I like lean back into 4x5 a little bit, because of having that meaning and that slow process. And I think when people look at you as a film photographer, as a large format photographer, it's a little bit more understanding as to why you don't release so much work. Whereas if they see that you're working with digital and you're only releasing work every so often, like what I am, it's kind of like, oh, well, just take more photos.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, it goes down to the whole thing of like, the more you have of something, the less each of those things, means. So, and there's more meaning if there's less of something. There's more value if there's less of something. So, if I look at a photographer and they have, 12 pictures on their website, I will have a much different experience looking at that versus a photographer that has 300 pictures on their website. Like, I won't even want to look at more than, I don't know, like 5 or 6 photos if they have like, 300 images. I don't know how many people actually have.
I get overwhelmed way too quick.
Yeah, they all start looking the same. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go onto their website and I'm like, oh, so you have 100 photographs in a single gallery. Like, to me, that's poor curation.
Yeah.
That's like saying that you either think that all of your photographs in that gallery are super great, which they're not. Like, you can get rid of some of those, I guarantee you. Or you just are throwing everything into a basket and just hoping for the best.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I'd much rather have a highly curated gallery, or a few like galleries on my website, a few portfolios, whatever you want to call them, that have 15 to 20 photographs each, where every single photograph in there counts as something.
Yeah. Like
William Neal talks about that in his portfolio development book, and he's talked about it in interviews as well. And it's just about having a very tight-knit, every single photograph in there counts. And when you go to add another one into it, then look through that whole gallery, and if that one that you're adding in is stronger than one of the other ones, get rid of the weakest one. Yeah. So that way you don't lose the power of that gallery, the meaning through that gallery too.
Yeah, and it's almost, there's times when I'll look at, let's say, a photography book, and I'm flipping through. I'm like, okay, this is pretty good. These ones work well together, this and that. And at a certain point, you reach the limit of like, I've looked at too many pictures, and then the book just keeps going on and on and on. And it's, you don't really, you don't have the opportunity to take in those images as much. It just becomes like a sensory overload thing where the one image kind of melts into the next image. And so I there's definitely something to be said about that. So I don't think, I think for your approach, I don't see the fact that, there's less work out there. I don't see that as a bad thing. I think it's all about, finding the meaning in that work, and, having that paired with the writing and such, where people will have take different meaning from the image based on the writing and everything else. And so I think, Yeah, I think you're perfectly fine in that regard.
Yeah,
and you have quite a few images on your website. So I mean, your website's pretty decent in that regard. You don't have a lot on social media yet, but that's perfectly fine. You know.
Yeah, I mean, my website definitely. I plan on going through that again and really curating that down to 1 or 2, maybe 3 at most galleries, and just like I said, really making it the portfolio that I want it to be. Of here are the photographs that mean something to me, that weren't just taken on a whim, that have stories behind them, that hold some kind of like lessons or whatever you want to call it, and just sticking with that. Because I don't think, like, one of the other criticisms that went along with that was, and I know all of these were like well-meaning, and not trying to take them, like, put them in a negative light or anything, but one of the other ones was you want a large body of work because you want to be seen as someone who can be like an authority almost in a creative person kind of thing, if that makes sense. Like someone who actually is constantly creating work and like doing the photography in order to talk to other photographers and that kind of thing, which doesn't make sense to me, but
yeah. Yeah, I'm actually quite uncomfortable with the whole like being seen as an authority on something. I very much shy away from that. And it's just, to me, it's a weird concept. It's something that seems very foreign to me. Like I don't want to be seen as an authority on things. I'm a dude that takes pictures of trees. I don't know. It's and rocks and leaves and stuff. I don't know. I think, you know, obviously that is something that leads to from a better business standpoint of, people want to learn how to do this or that. But I think if we were to talk to any of those people, they'd be like, yeah, I'm just kind of trying to figure it all out. I'm no expert on this.
No. And ultimately, I just want to share my story and share what's meaningful to me, how I see the world. And if you resonate with that, and if I can help a few people to get into photography or to appreciate nature and find healing in those paths, then I'm more than happy with that, without having to be on some big platform and be like, I'm an authority behind any of this. Yeah. Like, these are just my stories.
I'm always skeptical. If there's ever a person who's like a self-proclaimed expert on something, I'm like, it feels like they're trying too hard. It just like I just see it on the radar right away in terms of like, I don't know. It's kind of like a whole red flag thing.
Yeah.
But speaking of sort of the healing power of nature and such, I had a rather interesting experience when I was working on some of the videos from the trip. So I'll do a rough edit of all the videos just to kind of make sure I have everything I need. And then I usually do all those edits before I even see the film. And so just in the sense that, I don't know in the field how the photos turned out. And so I also edit the videos from the standpoint of, I don't know how the photos turned out. And then I will end up doing a voiceover at the end to kind of, fill in my thoughts on the images. And it's part of the process that works pretty well. But I was going through and editing them. And while I was in the field, based on a really cool idea that my wife gave me, she said that, when you're out there, if you see something that looks pretty cool, if you're in an area kind of away from people where it's a bit more of a controlled environment, you should just find really cool scenes of nature with really good sounds and just let the video camera go for like 10 minutes. And then, put a video out where it's nothing but nature, just the sounds of nature, the breeze going through the leaves and all kinds of just, there's something very powerful about the sound of, especially with the microphone I use where it's a stereo microphone, and even the wind can sound pretty nice. And so I did some of those clips. One of them was a scene in a canyon, and there's all these maples, reddish leaves at that point. And I have the camera angling upward, and then the sun is behind one of the maple trees, and it's moving a little bit in the wind. So you have kind of like this glimmers of light, and then the wind kicks up, and then the leaves start raining down a little bit. And I did 10 minutes of that. And then also I did another clip a little later on in the trip where it was underneath a ponderosa pine. and just the wind going through the pine needles, which is also a really good sound. But I was going through and I put just a hint of those, maybe about 5-6 seconds of those clips in the videos, with the idea of when that video plays, I'll have like a little thing that pops up kind of from the corner, which you can do via YouTube, which will link to if a person wants to watch the full 10 minutes of that, just a calm nature and kind of experience what I experience out there.
Yeah, like atmospheric videos kind of thing.
And my wife was saying, you could just loop that over and over again and have it go for like an hour or something if you wanted to. And then I would do, some of the audio stuff I do where I layer the sounds a little bit. Because when it comes to audio recording, it's a little bit like the dynamic range of a photo where, if I'm talking, for example, I have to have the mic levels turned down so I sound fine, but then you don't really hear much background noise behind me. So what I'll do sometimes is I'll record background noise of just like the leaves and the birds and stuff, and then I kind of mix that in when I'm talking where it sounds like it does in reality, but it's just kind of working with the mics. But I'll go through and I'll kind of layer some of that in there with the bird sounds and stuff like that. But I was editing this video, and I was listening to one of those 10-minute clips and kind of watching it on the screen. And in my home office, my computer is up against a window. And then I have like these kind of these sheer blinds that go down where it doesn't distract from the screen. But I had the window open, and so there's a little breeze coming in. And then there was another window on the other side of my home office, and I had that open. So I'm getting this nice cross breeze going through. And I'm listening to that. And so I've got my headphones on as I'm doing the editing. And it was fascinating because I was kind of getting lost in this video. And then the breeze came in through the window, and I smelled maples. There are no maples outside.
Yeah.
There's nothing outside that smells anything like maples. But something about immersing myself in that environment by listening with the headphones triggered the scent of maples in my brain. It was the weirdest thing. Like I took off the headphones. I kind of moved closer to the window. I gave it like a long sniff. There was no maples. So it just shows how much our senses are intertwined, where my brain says, you're looking at maples. You feel a breeze coming in. You're probably going to smell maples right now. And so when you're talking about like the healing power of nature, it's just, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it that I don't even think we begin to understand how it affects the brain. And I should also mention that while I was doing this, I felt so incredibly calm and relaxed as all this was happening. And so there's really something there. And I thought it was an absolutely fascinating experience to actually smell a phantom scent that did not exist.
I don't know. It's just crazy how that stuff works.
Yeah.
Like you can just be like so immersed into something that like your brain gets tricked into smelling or hearing something that just isn't there, but is there in the video that you watched or whatever. Yeah. Like, yeah. And speaking on those videos too, like I've always thought that if I were to just found a tick on me.
Oh, well, that's not good.
No, it'll go on the paper for now. Anyway, if I were to do those types of, like the videos that you do with your photography journals and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
If I were to ever do those, I don't know that I would want to have anything but natural sounds to it.
Yeah.
Like no talking to camera, just you're watching me be in nature and listening to nature as it happens. And that's that. Like, here's me silently or quietly setting up the camera as I find this scene and photographing it and going through that journey. And this is what I hear as I'm walking around, and this is what I see. Not like me explaining anything to you, not talking through my process or anything like that. Just here's what I'm doing. Yeah. I always thought those would be a very niche audience for those, definitely, but a very calming experience if you can do them right.
Yeah. And that is something I've actually gravitated a lot more toward lately. And that's something where while I was going through and editing these videos, there's a lot of that. I mean, I love, one of the things I do with the videos is I lead with the sound. So you'll hear things before you see things. And I love the process of starting with a black screen, then you hear the sound of what's going on. and then the video fades in. So it leaves you guessing a little bit of, where I am, what's going on. And it leaves a little to the imagination, which is kind of nice. But that's something that I've always enjoyed. And I have several in the videos in a series where it's, I'm, starting the day hiking in this and that, and I don't say a word until after I take the first photo. And it's also a bit, you had mentioned kind of a niche audience, and there's definitely something to that, because I find it rather amusing because I show basically the whole process of taking the photo. I just have the video camera going, and I cut from one view to the next and this and that to kind of speed things up a little bit. But it's funny, I had some complaints at one point where people were saying, I wish it was, showing more of the process of photography and not just you walking around. I'm like, I'm literally showing the entire thing. Like,
yeah, that is my process. Sorry.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny because I think there are some people that watch the videos because they want to learn. And I get that. But at the same time, when I'm out in the field, I don't want to teach. I find that comes across as kind of, I don't know, I feel like I'm talking down to the audience in some way. I feel like it's, I don't know. I feel uncomfortable with that whole thing. So my whole approach has been just to show the process, show the results, and people take from it what they will. But and the other thing too is oftentimes I'll take 2 photos of the scene, and when I record the videos, I move the camera around constantly. So I'll have it, over my right shoulder as it take one picture, then I move the camera over to my left side and have it roll while I take another photo. And I can edit it all to look like I'm just taking one photo. But just by moving the camera around, it kind of gives a little better sense of what's going on. But yeah, I do show the whole process. But it's just, like you said, I think there's something almost like a ASMR kind of a thing when it's not really talking, it's just showing the process, some layered sound from like some bird sounds and stuff like that, just to give the feeling of being there.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, something to consider at least.
Yeah.
Especially as I think towards the future of like this whole project, this direction that I'm starting to walk in and seeing where that all takes me. That could definitely be something that I could see doing it, not all the time, but every so often, every few trips, maybe like a quarterly thing or something maybe. But we'll see what happens. By the time I get around to it, YouTube's probably going to be dead anyway. So we'll be on to the next thing.
Though I will say that it'll be interesting to see if you end up going down that road and doing some video stuff. I find the process of editing the videos to be quite therapeutic in its own right.
That's how I feel about the podcast sometimes too.
Yeah. And especially for the videos, because you have all the sounds of nature, you have just, it activates something in the brain where it allows you to relive that experience. And so I think that would actually work. It would pair very well with written stuff as well as the images. And like you're saying earlier, it's not for a huge audience. The general public isn't going to necessarily embrace that, but that's fine because it will be embraced by those who are meant to embrace it.
Yeah.
And so I think for you, the process of making those videos and editing and stuff would be quite beneficial in its own right.
Yeah. And now that I think about it a little bit too, because I said about doing those like talking to camera kind of videos as well, I could see just doing those out in nature instead of having it in like a typical office setup.
Yeah.
I could see playing around with that idea too a little bit and having like that, the first 2.5 minutes and the last 2.5 minutes or whatever are just like more of walking away, walking out of camera, like nature photo or nature videos and seeing how that goes. I don't know. Also, there's a lot.
And also just like doing like a voiceover of like reading journal entries or whatever after the fact and kind of mixing it in there with it.
That's true.
I think that would also be good. I've been tempted to do that for the videos I do now that I'm doing the written journal. But for the interest of time, it's hard to fill the amount of time it would take me to read some of the entries with video. So that gets to be a little bit trickier, but perhaps something at some other point when it seems to work pretty well.
Yeah. So
I've reached a new a cycling midlife crisis, if you will.
Oh boy.
I ordered something just to make me look even cooler in my spandex.
Great. Can't wait to see it.
Yeah. Prescription cycling glasses that are the transition ones that darken to make me look even cooler when it's outside.
You're taking me back to like my 5th grade glasses days when those were all like all the rage. Grandfather had them, had the transition lenses, and
yeah.
I remember having them, and they were terrible because you would go inside from like a bright sunny day, and it was just, you couldn't see anything. And if you took off your glasses, you couldn't see anything either. So it's just.
And there's also something about, for like regular glasses, there's something about the styling of regular glasses combined with the transition lenses. When I see people with them, it has the appearance that they're perhaps visually impaired. It just, I don't know. The styling wise, it doesn't work as well. So it'll be interesting to see how these ones work out. But I gotta say, this stuff is really crazy expensive.
Yeah.
Way more expensive than regular glasses. But I will look forward to getting those at some point. In I think you said about 2 weeks or so.
Yeah. I mean, I have transition. My motorcycle helmet has a transition lens on it, and it's nice. They're great, especially when you're outside and like as the sun, like it changes depending on the sunlight. Don't have to worry about wearing sunglasses within the helmet too. But
yeah.
But when it comes to walking indoors with that kind of thing, no. It's
yeah, not quite as versatile for that. And I have one other final little story, which I think might be of interest for those listening. So dogs love peanut butter, right?
Yes. Yeah.
They're fans. They're fans of the peanut butter. And a little while back, my wife and I were like, well, he likes peanut butter. What would happen? She said, what would happen if I smear a little peanut butter on your back and you just lay down there and Oliver will just clean it up? You'll get like this back massage, right? It's kind of like goat yoga, but it's like a dog back massage. It worked very well. It's actually incredibly soothing. He's going to town, just making sure everything's fine. But here's the thing. You know who also likes peanut butter?
Your cats.
Cats also like peanut butter. Yeah. But I will say, if anyone wants to have a massage experience, but not pay the money for it, highly recommended. Highly recommended. The cats and the dogs, they team up. And so just put that in your arsenal of stuff. It's my tip for the day.
I was very scared for where you were going with that exactly. That could have gone in a whole number of ways, and we need to keep this show like PG.
Yeah. But just putting that out there. Peanut butter massage, dogs, cats, everyone enjoys it.
All right. I think we're good with that.
I hope you enjoyed our creative banter. You can learn more about Cody's work by visiting his website, codyschultz.com. And you can find my work at benhorn.com. For further discussion, join us at patreon.com/creativebanter. It's a place where we can interact with you, the listener. And although we greatly appreciate those who contribute by joining a tier, discussions are open to everyone, whether you're a paying member or not. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you around next time.